Introduction. In an era increasingly defined by the impacts of climate change, the threat of rising sea levels looms large over many coastal cities worldwide. By 2030, several urban centers face the disturbing possibility of being submerged due to unchecked environmental changes and inadequate adaptation efforts. Here, we explore 9 cities on the brink of potential inundation, their futures precariously balanced between resilience and environmental catastrophe. 1. Miami, Florida, USA. Miami, renowned for its vibrant culture and iconic beaches, stands as one of the most vulnerable cities in the face of rising sea levels. Located on the southeastern tip of Florida, Miami's low-lying terrain and porous limestone foundation make it particularly susceptible to inundation. With an average elevation of just 6 feet above sea level, even minor increases in ocean levels pose significant risks to its infrastructure and population. 2. Bangkok, Thailand. Bangkok, the bustling capital of Thailand, is grappling with a dual threat of sinking land and rising sea levels. Built on the floodplains of the Chao Phraya River Delta, the city's rapid urbanization and groundwater extraction have caused its landmass to sink at an alarming rate of more than 1 inch per year in some areas. This subsidence, compounded by projections of rising sea levels due to climate change, places Bangkok at high risk of regular flooding and eventual inundation by 2030. 3. Jakarta, Indonesia. Jakarta, Indonesia's sprawling capital and economic hub, faces a critical threat from both sinking land and rising sea levels. Situated on low-lying marshland at the mouth of the Siliwang River, the city experiences severe subsidence due to excessive groundwater extraction and poor land management practices. This subsidence, coupled with projections of significant sea level rise in the coming decades, poses an existential threat to Jakarta's survival as a habitable city. The consequences are already evident, with parts of Jakarta sinking by as much as 10 inches per year, exacerbating flooding during the monsoon season. Efforts to address the city's vulnerability include the construction of a massive seawall and a bold plan to relocate Indonesia's capital to the island of Borneo. However, these measures face formidable challenges, including funding constraints, bureaucratic hurdles, and the need for widespread public support. 4. Venice, Italy. Venice, often celebrated for its romantic canals and historic architecture, confronts a stark reality. The city is sinking into the Adriatic Sea. Built on a network of more than 100 small islands, Venice has long grappled with subsidence exacerbated by human activity, including groundwater extraction and the weight of modern construction. While the city's iconic landmarks, such as St. Mark's Square and the Doge's Palace, remain relatively preserved, the surrounding lagoon and outlying islands face an uncertain future. In recent years, Venice has experienced increasingly frequent and severe flooding events, known as acqua alta, where high tides inundate its streets and piazzas. The MOS project, a system of mobile barriers designed to protect the city from extreme tides, offers some hope for mitigating future inundations. However, the project's completion and effectiveness remain uncertain amid logistical challenges and environmental concerns. 5. Dhaka, Bangladesh. Dhaka, the densely populated capital of Bangladesh, confronts a dual threat from sinking land and the upstream effects of climate change. Situated on the floodplains of the Ganges-Brahmaputra Meghna Delta, Dhaka is prone to regular flooding during the monsoon season, exacerbated by deforestation, urbanization, and the impacts of upstream dam construction. The city's vulnerability is compounded by its rapid population growth and inadequate infrastructure, which strain its capacity to cope with extreme weather events. Dhaka's informal settlements, home to millions of low-income residents, are particularly at risk, lacking basic amenities and flood protection measures. Efforts to address Dhaka's vulnerability include the construction of embankments, drainage canals, and resilient housing for vulnerable communities. However, these measures often fall short in the face of rapid urbanization and limited resources. leaving millions of residents exposed to the uncertainties of climate change. 6. New Orleans, Louisiana, USA. New Orleans, located in the heart of the Mississippi River Delta, has long battled the dual threats of sinking land and coastal erosion. The city's low-lying terrain, compounded by the subsidence caused by oil and gas extraction and the weight of urban development, makes it uniquely vulnerable to flooding from hurricanes and storm surges. The devastation wrought by Hurricane Katrina in 2005 exposed the city's vulnerabilities and prompted significant investments in flood protection and coastal restoration efforts. The construction of levees, floodwalls, and pumping stations has bolstered New Orleans' resilience to some extent, reducing the risk of catastrophic flooding during major storms. However, these measures are increasingly strained by the compounding impacts of sea level rise and the deteriorating condition of Louisiana's coastal wetlands, which act as natural buffers against storm surges. Without sustained efforts to address land subsidence and invest in coastal restoration, New Orleans faces a future where large parts of the city may be at risk of inundation by 2030. The city's unique cultural heritage and vibrant communities underscore the urgency of proactive adaptation measures and international collaboration on climate resilience. By prioritizing sustainable urban planning and ecosystem restoration, New Orleans can enhance its resilience to future climate risks and preserve its rich cultural legacy for generations to come. 7. Lagos, Nigeria. Lagos, the economic powerhouse of Nigeria and one of Africa's fastest-growing cities, faces a complex set of challenges from land subsidence and rising sea levels. Situated on a low-lying coastal plain, Lagos experiences significant land subsidence due to groundwater extraction, rapid urbanization, and the impacts of climate change. The city's vulnerability is exacerbated by its dense population, inadequate infrastructure, and informal settlements located in flood-prone areas. Residents of waterfront communities, such as Makoko and Agegunnel, are particularly at risk, lacking basic services and facing regular displacement from flooding events. 8. Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam. Ho Chi Minh City, the bustling economic hub of Vietnam, confronts a dual threat from land subsidence and rising sea levels. Built on the floodplains of the Mekong Delta, the city's rapid urbanization and groundwater extraction have caused its landmass to sink at an alarming rate, exacerbating the risk of flooding and inundation. The consequences are already visible, with parts of Ho Chi Minh City sinking by more than 2 inches per year in some areas. Flooding during the monsoon season is increasingly severe, affecting millions of residents and posing significant challenges to the city's infrastructure and economy. Efforts to address Ho Chi Minh City's vulnerability include the construction of flood barriers, drainage canals, and resilient housing for vulnerable communities. However, these measures often struggle to keep pace with the city's rapid growth and the increasing frequency of extreme weather events. Without decisive action to address land subsidence, improve urban planning, and enhance climate resilience, Ho Chi Minh City faces a future where large areas of the city may be at risk of inundation by 2030. Urgent investments in infrastructure, sustainable development, and community resilience are essential to protect the livelihoods of Ho Chi Minh City's residents and ensure the city's long-term sustainability in the face of climate change. 9. Rotterdam, Netherlands. Rotterdam, renowned for its innovative approaches to water management, faces a unique challenge from rising sea levels despite its reputation as a global leader in flood resilience. Situated on the banks of the Rhine-Meuse Scheldt Delta, Rotterdam has historically relied on an extensive network of dikes, dams, and pumping stations to protect its low-lying terrain from flooding. However, the city's vulnerability to sea level rise has become increasingly apparent, with projections indicating that parts of Rotterdam may be at risk of inundation by 2030. Efforts to enhance Rotterdam's resilience include ongoing investments in climate-adaptive infrastructure, such as the construction of floating homes, green roofs, and water plazas designed to capture and manage rainwater. Conclusion. The plight of these 9 sinking cities underscores the urgent need for global action on climate change and sustainable urban development. As sea levels continue to rise and extreme weather events become more frequent and severe, cities worldwide must prioritize resilience, innovation, and international collaboration to safeguard the livelihoods of millions of residents and preserve cultural heritage for future generations.